Hello everyone, it's been quite a week, so you might see that I look a bit tired. So this is the last thing that I'm doing Friday night before leaving for home to spend the weekend. And I don't normally talk about myself on my YouTube channel, but I thought this would be something that I would do kind of like a vlog kind of thing. And so my name is Mikko Rönkkö and I'm Associate Professor of Entrepreneurship at Jyväskylä School of Business and Economics. Most people probably know me from my work on methods, but I also do empirical research on entrepreneurship. And this week I have two good news to share. The first one is that I got tenured, or that's not official yet because the principal still needs to, or the rector still needs to sign the papers, but it's in the process. The second piece of good news that is a topic, the main topic of this video is that I got a huge research grant. So I have a few €100,000 of money from the Academy of Finland, and this is pure research funding. And I need to hire a postdoc. So if you're interested in studying methods and want to work with me, then you should listen to this video, or if you're too eager to apply, there's also a link up here for applying to the position. But let me tell you a bit about this project and the background of the project and what kind of person I'm looking for. So I'm mostly known for my work on methods, and I have kind of like two streams. I've done some work on like studying how methods work. I did my dissertation about partial least squares because I realized that that method really doesn't do what people think that it does. And I ended up actually studying that topic because I was applying that method in a research project, and then I got results that were really surprising. So then I had this mathematics student with me, and we wrote a paper about what the method actually does. And that got me into studying methods, and I did Monte Carlo simulations and that kind of things. But I think that's kind of like secondary interest now. So what I'm in terms of methods, what I'm more interested in is how we actually use methods and how could we use methods better, and what explains misuse. And by misuse I mean that there are a lot of studies that when you read them carefully, they're actually quite full of errors. And this is not like fraud, but this is just like honest mistakes in data analysis. And these don't get corrected frequently enough, so that's a bit of a problem. And I noticed this problem when I was the department editor for Journal of Operations Management, so I got this nice award for that. And I was the methods editor for that journal for 3 years, so that's one term. And I saw quite a lot of studies, and I came to realize that the methods application in most empirical research in management is fairly mechanistic. So how we apply methods is that we take a look at a paper that has been published in a journal what we want to publish, and then we or the person who takes a look at the paper then just tries to copy what the other person has done without really like fundamental deep understanding of what the method does. And of course not everyone has to be a methods expert, but the problem is that at some point you might have a complicated method that is being applied by a researcher who doesn't understand what the method does. It's being reviewed by reviewers who don't understand what the method does, and then there's an editor who makes the decision to publish the paper without understanding what the method does. There's a good example of that. When I was editor of JOM, then I got a citation alert, and there's a citation from that journal to my article on partial least squares, and then I read the paper who was citing my work, and I realized that that paper actually first claimed that they use partial least squares path modeling, then they claimed that they use partial least squares regression analysis. Well, those are two completely different things. If you're using one, then you are not using the other, so you can't be using both at the same time. Of course you could do like multiple methods, but this was just one method in the paper. And then they reported a likelihood statistic, and neither of these two PLS methods produced that likelihood statistic. And that paper was authored by a doctoral student who had just graduated, and there were 3 co-authors, 3 tenured professors, and then it was, for some reason, there were 3 editors involved with the paper, all full professors, and then there was the editor-in-chief, and then 2 or 3 anonymous reviewers. And none of these people apparently understood what was going on in the rubrics in the paper. So that's a bit of a problem. And then I went to study this problem in more detail, and I went through quite a lot of papers published in that study. So I had a team of researchers looking into that. We haven't published the paper yet, and we basically kind of like reviewed papers again that had been published by method experts, and we found a lot of mistakes, and some of those were just misreporting what was done in the paper. So for example, an example of misreporting is a person applies two-stage least squares, and then they tell that they apply two-stage least squares by running a regression of the endogenous variable and then taking the residual from that regression and use that in the second stage model. Well, that's not the right way to do two-stage least squares, because you are not taking the residual, but you're taking the fitted values. It's quite unlikely that the researcher would actually misapply two-stage least squares, because that's normally done by using a software command that does the full analysis for you instead of implementing it by hand. But there are a lot of that kind of errors. There are errors where the analysis technique that you apply is inappropriate for the task. It's applied inappropriately. I have this one paper that my current doctoral student, who is going to be working in the project as well, that I want to talk about in a moment. We are looking at model tests in meta-analytical structural equation modeling, and we identified that a lot of people are specifying constraints in their models that don't make any sense. For example, if you specify a full mediation model in your data, you do a full mediation model in SCM, you're basically forcing a full mediation model on the data. And then you will get evidence of full mediation, and you will also get a model test statistic that tells that model is not right for the data. If you ignore the model test, then you can claim that you have full mediation because the paths that you have are all significant. We have replicated a few papers that do that and just test a partial mediation model, and the partial mediation model usually explains the data a lot better than a full mediation model that forced on the data. So that is the methods misused. Then I've also been looking at how can we use and interpret models or results better. And I got this, we got the best paper award a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, from Organizational Research Methods for a paper that just does just that. So we are looking at how transformations are applied and interpreted. Like if you have a Poisson regression model, for example, then the Poisson model is a non-linear model, so it fits an exponential curve, and that needs to be taken into account when interpreting the results. And we wrote a paper about how to interpret those non-linear effects in management research. So that is another thing that I'm interested in, like how do we use our existing methods better, and how do we communicate the results better? How can we be more transparent? So these are the kind of things that I'm interested in. All right, and of course I do empirical research on entrepreneurship. So it's like my current portfolio is maybe half and half if I count what is currently under review. So my project is about methods misuse, and the idea in the project is that we do 3 kinds of research. First of all, I have secured the cooperation of 2 big journals. So one is an ABS 4-star, so that's an FT50 journal. Another one is an ABS 4 journal, that is a top journal in a topic area in management. And these journals have agreed to provide their review reports for us. So we are going to be looking at how the review process actually handles method errors. And then also, does the review process actually sometimes force errors into papers? I've seen, as an author of empirical papers, I've seen quite often that reviewers recommend that I do something that I don't think that is quite right. And I think most particularly junior researchers who are not very highly educated in methods might find it easier just to comply with the reviewer desires or requirements instead of trying to argue against the reviewer. And if I think from my perspective as a reviewer, I spend not a lot of time per paper when I review, or just depends on the paper, but I have made mistakes myself when reviewing papers. So I've made claims about papers that I've sometimes read, claiming something that they don't actually say. So if I read a book like 2 years ago, and then I remember a fact about that book, and I cite that fact in my review report, because I'm not going to spend as much time on that review report than I spend on writing a proper article, I might forget things and remember things incorrectly. And when reviewers make mistakes because of being in a hurry and being careless, then authors might not necessarily be in the position to disagree, but will just comply. And then there are different schools of thought. So in some cases you might genuinely have conflicting evidence, and some things are not super clear what's the right and what's the wrong way, and then in that case also it might be challenging for authors to disagree with the reviewers. So we're going to look at these reviewer reports that are confidential and that we get from these journals, and see how the review process addresses methods misuse and whether the review process actually increases or leads to methodological errors in papers. So that's one thing that we do in the project. Another thing that we do in the project is we kind of put existing published papers to a review. So I have a team of 3 postdocs. So one is the postdoc that I hope to hire, and I have already 2 people that I will hire that I've picked already. And with that team, we are going to re-evaluate or re-review published papers and look for problems. And how that works and how that has worked in the past, I've done one paper like that before about Journal of Operations Management. And how we did that was that I trained one was a postdoc at that time, one was a doctoral student. I trained those to evaluate the papers, and they spotted certain errors, and whenever they found something that they had never seen before, or that they were not sure if it's done correctly or not, then we had a call, and we kind of looked through those questionable or unclear things together and identified whether it was a methodological error or not. And quite often they were just like unclear reporting that just shows that the authors might not fully understand what they were doing with the method. So this is the second thing that we'll do in the project. We'll kind of re-review existing papers and look if there are any errors. And then the third primary thing that we do in the project is kind of like primary methodological research. So that means that we don't look at existing empirical papers, we don't look at review reports, but we look at methodological problems that we have seen. So for example, you can take a look at, for example, my paper on nonlinear 8 simple guidelines for improved understanding of transformations and nonlinear effects. So that paper, published in Organizational Research Methods in 2022, looks at how we do these nonlinear models. Another paper that I'm currently working on is how do we do model testing. So I have actually, it's not shown in the camera, but there's a great yellow post-it reminding me that I have to work on that paper pretty soon. So we are looking at how model tests are being used in management research and are they used correctly, and how do we improve the practice. So instead of looking at the publication record as a whole, we take a look at specific issues. We write papers for organizational research methods. These can contain reviews of existing, like systematic reviews that I often have in my papers on methods, or they can contain simulation studies, either Monte Carlos, where we test some principle that we don't think quite works like people think it does, or we can do single sample simulations, so simulate a large data set and show a methodological principle or just demonstrations and empirical data. The idea is to point out specific problems, explain why they are problems, and then improve the current research practice. So that is the third thing that we do in the project. And my overall goal is with this project is to raise awareness of what I call is as methodological crisis or methods crisis, and this relates to kind of a little on the reproducibility crisis in psychology and now in management, but it's not about questionable research practices like data mining, but it's more about just like honest misuse of complex statistical analysis techniques in applied research. All right. I explained the project, and I have a list here that what I need to explain. So I'm looking for a postdoc for this project, studying methods misuse, and I would like to have a person who, first of all, is interested in understanding and learning about methods. So that is the number one qualification that I need. And additionally, whether you want to focus more on this primary methodological research that might involve doing Monte Carlo simulations or looking at the specific issues, or whether you want to rather reanalyze existing papers with me to find problems and find ways we could avoid those problems, that can work as well. So I'm going to tailor the project based on the candidate that I will pick. The candidates that I have now, or the people I have recruited now, one of them wants to do simulations, another one is more wants to look at what's going on in the review process and how do we improve the research practice in published papers. I do both. And so what do I offer? So why would anyone want to work with me? You can see the official version of what do we offer in the link in the job advertisement here. But I offer a chance to focus on working on methods with me for 2.5 years, and with basically zero teaching, or at most 10% teaching. So that's the conditions of the grant that I have say that if I hire someone, they must do at least 90% of their time must go to research. And I'm also pretty well connected to many methods experts in management, and I have quite a lot of travel money, because the grant that I got from Academy of Finland, they really want to increase researcher mobility. So if I hire a person, then I can provide the connections and provide the money if they want to work abroad in a country different than Finland for a while with some senior methods person in the field. And then I can teach you how to publish in organizational research methods or psychological methods. I published in both journals and quite a lot in ORM actually, and I have one paper now under review. I'm also an editor of that journal, so I know that journal really well. And if that is something that interests you, then working with me might be useful. Another bigger thing that I mentioned in the project application is that I want to focus on research career development. So my idea is that if I hire someone, then I want them to succeed and be in a good position to find their next job. So postdoc is always, at least in Finland, is always temporary. And I did myself 2 postdocs, that's fairly normal, before I went to tenure track, and now I got tenure from tenure track. I want the person who comes to my project to work with me for 2.5 years, and then after the project I want them to be an expert in methods in their field. So my field is entrepreneurship and also doesn't work on strategy, but because this is a methods focused project, my postdoc could also be from organizational behavior, for example. So we have organizational behavior department or research group at the business school, and we have strategy and entrepreneurship research group that might be most relevant for people who I might recruit. So I want to have the person who is looking for the next job after my project to be known as a rising star methodologist in their subject area, but also to have a portfolio of some empirical research. And this researcher career development is a big part of the project. About teaching, teaching is important for research career, and the project itself doesn't require teaching except for at most 10% according to the rules of the grant. But I can offer teaching opportunities. So if a person who I recruit wants to teach, then I can offer particularly doctoral level teaching, and that's going to be paid extra. So if you want to teach methods for doctoral students or run a course with me, you can do that, and that will be paid extra. Let's see if I have mentioned everything that I want to have. Yeah, I have the list, the qualifications for an ideal candidate, and I'm just gonna go through the list because I don't remember them by heart. So you need to have a doctorate, of course, because this is a postdoc position. Ideally, business-related discipline. I'm in entrepreneurship, and I'm in the research group that also contains strategy scholars. So strategy entrepreneurship interest would be ideal. But I've also done work with organizational behavior researchers. I've worked with marketing researchers. I've worked with information system scholars. If you are in any of those fields, then I can probably offer you connections. The important part is that the understanding of methods. Then you need to have experience with a statistical software. And I use R and Stata. If you have experience in those software, great. If you don't, then I can teach you the basics, as long as you have some experience in using some kind of statistical software. Publishing something about methods or doing some work on methods is a plus, but I don't expect most of my applicants to have experience in publishing or in organizational research methods, for example. None of the actually one of the postdocs that I have has an ORM publication already. I'll teach you how to do that. But the important part is that you have a good, solid understanding of basic methods like regression analysis, factor analysis, good understanding of a statistical software package, and a great interest toward learning more about how to do research on research methods. All right, that's it. If you are interested in working for me for 2.5 years, we can of course talk about extensions after that, but this is now 2.5 years secured funding. You can read the official job advertisement here, and you can also ask comments on the YouTube commenting field, or you can send me an email. So if you are watching this after I have the application period has ended, you can still drop me an email if I have something to offer and you're a person who I might be interested in. I'm always ready to talk.